Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Roseanne. We got Joe Rogan. We got Tucker Carlson. And, you know, Joe Rogan is just the gift that keeps on giving. You know, Joe Rogan has told Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, Ari Shaffir. He's told so many people, you need to start a podcast. You've heard him say it time and time again if you're an avid listener of the show. And he said the same thing to Roseanne. He said it at a time where she was considered racist. Her show had just got canceled. She was considered crazy. People were talking about how she's mentally ill. I think she got kicked off Twitter. There were all sorts of things that were happening with Roseanne. But she listened and it grew into something absolutely amazing. I'm going to play a Joe Rogan clip for you guys first, as always. And then we're going to get into Roseanne and Tucker Carlson. And Roseanne asks Tucker Carlson a question that we have all been wondering if he was actually going to answer. You're going to watch that. Just watch till the end and you will hear that question and the answer. Let's get into this Joe Rogan clip.
She's a Democrat. She's also a two-time, she served overseas, two deployments, and she's a 6-year veteran, and she's more than a 6-year veteran, right? 6-year congresswoman. Mm-hmm. She's, you know, she's getting censored. She's suing Google. So they're not just going after people that are on the right. Obviously, she's on the left. She's running as a Democratic candidate for president. She's suing them because they censored her search results.
Right.
Allegedly. I don't know enough about all that. There's no way I could.
Well, they also hold people's numbers of followers down. They can flip a switch and you lose
they can
followers.
shadow ban you.
Yeah, that's what everybody's shadow. Everyone I know is shadow banned. So
well,
what?
Santino
it doesn't
actually
matter.
had a conversation.
I mean, are people doing it for the advertising money? That's what I ask myself. I don't make a dime, and I've been at it for 20 years. I mean, I don't make a dime. In fact, every time I open my mouth, I cost myself some money.
You mean on social media? Yeah.
And so, of course, I won't be on there anymore.
Roseanne, you need a goddamn podcast. Your podcast
I know, Joe. I'm
monster.
trying to get it,
Monster.
but people do not know what to tell me what to do.
Well, I can help you.
I told you.
I
need someone to tell me what to do.
You're in the right place.
God damn it. Because I really need to tell people what's going on, and they don't even know. But I know because I did the reading for them.
Yes.
And I mean, this is all just a social experiment to see how far they can push us.
Let's
away
make that
from
happen.
each other, and away from any kind of possible power we could have to coalesce and go, wait a minute, you guys are not going to take any more of our money for your fucking travels. Hey, bitch. You know what I'm saying? Bitch.
Yeah, I do.
No. You can't. No. It was not in the public sphere. When she said it was in the public sphere.
Who was she?
Nancy.
Nancy Pelosi?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It was not in the public sphere.
Goddamn Nancy.
Oh, Nancy.
What did she do?
Nancy is on my last nerve.
What did she
I've
do?
been saying it for 10 years, too. Nancy, you're on my last nerve. You've got a lot to answer for in San Francisco, what you have allowed on the streets there to the homeless people. It's disgusting. I go up there, and I am disgusted.
It's crazy right now, and I don't think most people know how bad it is.
People are living in shit and filth. Their children around drug addicts dying in this fucking street, the richest financial district on the West Coast. You know, where's that money going? I just like, and then Laura Loomer went up there to Nancy's vineyard trying to find her. It's like, if you guys don't get yet that it don't matter who the president is, it's all a fucking scam to put public money into private pockets and nothing else.
Oh, man, I love Roseanne. You guys may never see my mother on this podcast because she's very camera shy, but she is very much like Roseanne once you get to know her. She gets very loud, and she'll swear quite a bit, and she'll say things that you could deem conspiratorial in a sense. That's why I absolutely love Roseanne. Not only have I been watching her forever, but also think about this. At this time when this podcast was made, she was considered crazy. But think about what she's saying. She's talking about California. She's talking about Nancy Pelosi. Like, don't you feel like Nancy Pelosi still has to answer for some things? Not that crazy. She's talking about California way before people were talking about, way before it was a known thing that you could find feces in many places in California. Way before it was known, she was talking about this. So not that crazy. You know, I the only thing I didn't like about this podcast is that I guess it was damage control with what was going on because she got canceled from her show, but I really didn't like the fact that they were pounding the fact that she was mentally ill. because what she does on her podcast now is very similar to all this. And I wouldn't say she's a crazy person at work when you're hearing her on her podcast. You're about to hear her talk with Tucker Carlson, and she doesn't sound like a crazy person to me. I'm going to be honest with you. She sounds like a very sane person, and her podcast has turned into something absolutely beautiful. And it's incredible to see. So thank you to Joe Rogan. And let's listen to her talk to Tucker Carlson. I mean, she went from being this lady's crazy to, and of course, you get branded as that if you're a massive Trump supporter, which she was at the time, which kind of telling into, what happened to her. Show gets canceled, branded as crazy, branded as racist, all these other things. You're mentally ill. The standard treatment, I would say. And now we see her sitting with Tucker Carlson, one of the biggest journalists in the world. She's sitting down with him, having a conversation, bringing out amazing things in Tucker Carlson. Let's move on to that real quick. Boom. Let's go.
Good or bad, it's so far outside of my control that I'm flattered.
Yeah, it is flattering, isn't it?
For sure. But I mean, it's hard to, I've never been. Good or bad, it's so far outside.
Crazy things that are in my head.
You can't get too crazy for me.
I know. That's what's so great.
That's true.
First of all, on the crazy train there, how do you feel about Trump saying he would consider you for vice president?
Oh, gosh, I don't. I put that in the category of asteroids striking the Earth. Good or bad, it's so far outside of my control that I'm flattered.
Yeah, it is flattering, isn't it?
For sure. But I mean, it's hard to, I've never been in politics.
Would you ever do it?
Would I accept?
Yeah, if you really asked you.
Think about that. I mean, I spent my whole life looking at politicians and commenting on them and passing judgment on them. And I've never run for, room mother. And so the idea of that is so far from anything I've ever done. It's kind of hard even to imagine.
What do you think?
I certainly support Trump. I'll tell you that. And I can tell you, I've always agreed with Trump's policies, always. And I lost friends over it. And I've never really actively supported anybody because it's not my job to actively support people. I watch, I like to watch. But I'm a voyeur.
Yeah.
But I became an active Trump supporter when they raided Mar-a-Lago last summer, the summer of 2022. That can't stand.
No, that can't.
And
that was something.
Agree with Trump on a lot. But even if I disagreed with Trump on a lot, I'd still be a Trump supporter because you cannot allow that. You cannot allow the regime, the president of the United States, to use the Justice Department to knock the front runner out of the race. You can't do that.
No, you can't do that.
So it's bigger than Trump. It's bigger than Biden. It's a question of, do you want to live in a free country with a functioning justice system?
That's exactly
and
right.
So I'm voting for Trump. And if they convict him, I will send him the max donations and I will lead protests. That's how I feel.
That's how I feel.
Because,
too.
and by the way, if I thought that he had committed some real crime, I wouldn't feel that way, but he didn't. Mm-hmm. He and Biden are both found with classified documents at home, along with every other former high-level federal official in history. But only Trump is indicted? Tell me how that works. Oh, shut up.
Okay. And Biden is the one who did it illegally because he was never president when he did it.
You think Dick Cheney brought home any classified Iraq war documents and showed them to his wife in 2003? Yes is the answer. And the FBI didn't, put bugs in his house and didn't. Look, I spent my life in Washington. I spent 35 years there from 1985 to 2020. And my father ran a federal agency. So I know how the classification system worked and still works. And it's a lie. It's a lie.
It's a complete lie.
It's a complete lie. There are over 1 billion classified documents. So how is that a democracy? If you don't know what your government is doing and you have no right to know on the basis of totally fraudulent national security claims, it's not a democracy, right? It's an oligarchy. And I believe in democracy. I think that the people own this country. It's not owned by federal unionized bureaucrats or appointees.
No.
Or the richest people. It's not just like the 27 billionaires get to run everything. I just don't agree with that.
I don't either.
I hate it, actually. And they're not even good at it. That's the other thing. They're selfish and they're stupid and they're short-sighted and they're totally lacking wisdom. So they're not even running the country well. But even if they were, I would still be opposed to it because that's a betrayal of the core promise of America.
Yeah, that's feudalism.
Completely. But at least in feudalism, there was a symbiotic relationship between the lord and the serfs. They each needed each other.
Right.
The people who run our country do not need labor.
Yeah.
Labor has no value in America. The average person has no power, no economic power. And when you take away the promise of free elections, you don't even have political power. Your vote doesn't even matter.
No.
That's really super dark. So I'm completely opposed to it. I reject the premise of the charges. Classified. On what grounds? Oh, they're nuclear secrets. Really, which ones? They can't tell you. They're classifying a lot, thousands of documents from the Kennedy assassination, which is now, next week, it'll be 60 years.
It's unbelievable.
November 22nd, 1963. And we're now in November of 2023. On what grounds could they be hiding that? Well, obviously to hide the CIA's complicity in the murder of the president. But there's no defensible grounds on which they can hide those documents. Don't lecture me about classification. I actually know a guy who was in charge of it. And I know a lot about this subject. It's a lie.
Yeah, I know
and don't expect me to play along with it.
What do you think of Hillary saying Trump's Hitler? Did that curdle your blood or it did mine?
I think I've never taken her very seriously. I mean, I know her also. I was at the newspaper in Arkansas in the early 90s, 30 years ago. So I know a lot about Hillary, and I don't think she's a good person. I think she would put you in a camp without thinking about it if you were in the way.
Well, she said it, re-education.
Well, for sure. And she means it. I mean, she's got an authoritarian sensibility, but I think she's not very bright. And I think she's she's close to 80, but I think of her as like a child. And so I don't take her seriously enough to really be mad at her, but she'll say whatever she needs to say. Trump is Hitler.
The thing she does so well, though, is to project what she does onto Trump. It's like she holds up the mirror and she's like, Russia, Russia, Russia. And that's when she was selling plutonium to Russia. She devised this whole thing with a fake dossier to frame a sitting United States president, which is, isn't that treason when you're then use a completely corrupt FISA court with fake FISA stuff to spy on to bring down the sitting president of the United States during wartime?
Yes.
Isn't that some sort of misprision of treason or something like that?
Of course. I mean, it's a betrayal of democratic principles, a betrayal of the Constitution. It's illegal.
And then she's sitting up there going, Trump is Hitler. Hey, look what you put us through for 7 years. And that doesn't even begin to talk about the physical damage done to Americans.
But it's pretty revealing, though, because most people couldn't do that. I mean, all of us lie.
Yeah,
but our lies, the average person, first of all, this is why polygraphs work. Polygraphs are not admissible in court, but that doesn't mean they don't work. Everybody uses polygraphs. The CIA uses polygraphs, the military uses polygraphs, big companies use polygraphs. Why? Because they work. They detect deception. And the reason they do is...
they don't work on sociopaths.
Exactly.
They don't work on sociopaths. But... I let that clip run a little long. I didn't mean to get into the Hillary part, but I mean, couldn't not have that in the clip. Yeah. So Trump, Tucker is voting Trump. He goes on record saying he's voting Trump. And this is pretty big. Will lead protests if he is convicted. That is a very big thing to say. And with all that, when he answered, because, he kind of danced around the question. He said, I'd have to think about it, and I never thought about it, and I watch politicians, and I've never been one, and all that stuff. I think, and this is not me saying that he's going to be vice president, but I think if Trump is serious about it, Tucker will do it. That's the only thing standing in the way of him becoming VP. If Trump is serious about it. If Trump's not serious about it, and he decides somebody else, well, then that's it. But if he's actually serious and he goes to Tucker and says, I think you would be a good fit. I need you for this. I need good people around me. Last time around, I did not have good people around me. They all stood against me. They all made me look this way and that way and everything. I need somebody like you. I think Tucker steps in. 1,000,000% I think he steps in. And people for some reason think he can no longer do his show or anything like that. He most certainly could. He could still do his show. It might look a certain way, maybe he couldn't focus on American politics as he is, now, running as becoming a vice president, but he could definitely go around the world and talk to world leaders. He could do that. It's never been done before, but it is something that he would be allowed to do. And, you could also look at that as almost like a type of state-run media at that point. And maybe you don't want that look, but I think at the end of the day, if need be, he does this. If he's needed, if Trump is serious. But to say that he'll lead protests, to say that Trump did nothing wrong, man, to say that he rejects the charges and he does the old thing that we've all been doing, that everybody keeps ignoring, is that he likened it to Biden having secret documents as well. Biden had secret documents, classified documents. Biden had them as well. The only difference is Trump was the president and he was allowed to have them, and Buddy was vice president and was not allowed to have them. But we don't talk about that part. It's something that everybody leaves out. Everybody on the right goes to the talking point of Trump did nothing wrong, and everybody on the left goes to the talking point of he's a criminal and this and that. But nobody brings that part up. That what he did, he was allowed to do. What Buddy did, what Sleepy did, he's one of the seven dwarfs. What Sleepy did, Sleepy was not allowed to do. So I love that he brought that up, because that's something that we keep on. That should be the main focus talking point. That should be the main one. It makes no sense at all. Well, it kind of does make sense, and it kind of is very telling to what's actually going on. Roseanne actually talks about it within this podcast about how Trump doesn't even get a jury and he's not getting a fair shake and, everything that we all know right now. But again, this is just incredible. Absolutely incredible that she has a podcast, that she's able to talk about this stuff. She's able to break this stuff down so well. And having talks of feudalism with Tucker Carlson after, years of people, she's crazy, she's this, she's that. Now she's interviewing big names. She did an interview with Eddie Bravo, James O'Keefe. Like, this is my kind of podcast. If you have not checked out Roseanne's podcast, just go to Spotify, put in Roseanne Barr. Her podcast will come up. I'm telling you, it is worth it. She doesn't always do, she's not like Rogan. She's not doing 4-hour podcasts or anything like that. They're digestible. They're like an hour. Sometimes it's an hour 20. Sometimes if it's really good, it might be an hour 30. But it's really good. And honestly, I know my audience. She's saying the things that most of us who you are watching, she's saying the things that most of us are thinking. She's touching on the topics that most of us want people to touch on. And also, you don't see him in this, but her son is also on the podcast. He's the producer. He's the one recording, making sure everything's working well. And then he also chimes in with some really good questions. And he is right on. Like, he has a tinfoil 3-piece suit that he just wears all the time. I'm telling you, it's actually a great podcast. This, hands down, in my opinion, out of everybody Joe Rogan has said, hey, you should start a podcast, this is the best call. Hands down, the best call. And I say to go to Spotify because I'll just put it like on other platforms, she doesn't get heard as much. I'll just say it like that. On Spotify, you are supporting her the best, I think. I think giving her downloads and plays on Spotify helps her the most. That's just me. Given what I know about all these platforms, I think that's the best thing for her. So I think I got another clip here. I forget what she says in here. She said, oh, wow, I got Tucker in a wild position. My apologies, Tucker. But I got another clip here. It's a short one, but again, they're just touching on the Trump situation. Let's go.
Always been here. It's all, and it emerges. And we lie to ourselves and imagine we've got it totally under control. Yeah. Everything can be explained rationally. That's why I hate this whole, they're in it for the money.
Yeah, no,
if you think that's all it's about, you're going to miss what's actually happening.
What it's really
about.
Well,
you both got fired when you had the #1 television shows. You guys were both racking money in. Well, I'm just bringing it up now because it's obviously not about the money. Because if it's about the money, both of you still have your job.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's what gets me.
They don't like what you were saying and what you were doing, and it's something that said we had to take them off. Fuck it. Fuck our stockholders. We're going to do it anyway. That's weird.
Well, I overheard in my writer's room one of the writers who was in the Democrat thing. Well, they all were, but
which one was not?
She said, "I'm just afraid this show is humanizing Trump voters."
Yeah, humanizing human beings. Wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, think about that.
People can't hear themselves.
No, they can't.
I would never even think that about Biden voters. I think they're human beings.
Of course they are.
And I know some of them, and not a ton at this point, but I do know still some. And
I have all in my family. It's like, that's why I wanted to do the show I did, to show a Hillary hater and a Trump hater in the same family. Right. And they still loved each other because I knew this terrible division they were pushing. And then they...
See that? That, I told you it was a short clip, but I just played that because it's a little more telling. Obviously, Roseanne, she put out a very... a tweet that could be seen as racist, right? She didn't mean for it to be racist. And then this whole storm happened around the show and it got canceled and it was all her fault and people were demonizing her. But when you look at what was she trying to do? She just broke it down. She wanted a show about someone who didn't like Hillary and someone who didn't like Trump, but they still loved each other. I think, and again, I got tinfoil under this hat. I got a tinfoil yarmulke under this hat. I think that the reason, and obviously, again, she put out a tweet, so the tweet was that, and people grabbed onto that. But people also did that to Elon Musk. Elon Musk put out a certain tweet, and people grabbed onto that, and then all sorts of advertisers started leaving X, and they said it was all because of that tweet, and all because he's embracing anti-Semitism. But before the tweet, just like with Roseanne, before the tweet, people really didn't like Elon Musk. It's kind of the same thing. I think they grabbed onto that tweet as the last kind of straw that they could use to say, okay, now let's get rid of this show. Because it was a show about someone who didn't like Trump and somebody, like, it was about a family that, like any family, you have people who are left-leaning, you have people who are right-leaning, but they still come together. But what does that do for the narrative? What does that set off in our minds when we hear that you could love someone who's on the left? Well, once you have that for your family and you keep on getting exposed to that, or you're exposed to a show like that, you're going to all of a sudden take that stance with your family. You keep getting exposed to that and you keep working like that in your family, you're going to take that stance with people on the outside of your family. You're going to start looking at people who are on the left, if you're a right-leaning person, and you're going to start looking at them with a more human tint to them. You're going to understand, oh, they're just like Uncle Joe. They're just like my mom. I get it. You know, the same points my mom brings up, this person probably still, they have the same talking points. If you're left leaning, you're going to start looking at people who are, you know, MAGA Republicans, and you're going to start looking at them and saying, you know what, I get it. I understand. You know, he's just like Uncle Joe, probably has the same thing. He's probably a little old school. That's why he likes this whole thing. That's what you're going to start doing. That's not good for the narrative. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that's completely the reason, but it definitely stands out to me. That stands out right away, that they don't like that whole thing of people getting along. This system thrives. I think we've all seen it in the past 5 years. This system thrives, or since Obama went into office. The system thrives on people othering each other. It just does. It thrives on it. And another point that they were making in that short clip that I played, where they were talking about it's not about the money. You know, her son made a great point. I got to learn his name, but her son made a great point. He said, if it was about the money, he goes, you guys were the top of the networks that you were on. If it was about the money, they just would have said, forget it. They would have just damage controlled, put it under the bridge, and just kept on going. And it's so true with Tucker. It's like, yeah, they paid however many, almost $1 billion, but it's like, why not keep Tucker on and make sure that you make that money back? Why get rid of him? All that does is lose you more money. You lost viewers, you lost trust, you lost reputation. Same thing with the network that Roseanne was on. I think it was NBC. I might be wrong about that. But same thing with the network Roseanne was on. Why on earth get rid of the top grossing show? Why not, if anything, it's a show about a family. Mom goes on vacation. Mom's not around much, but you can still have the same narrative of a family that has some left-leaning people, some right-leaning people, and they all get along. You can still do that. Why not still do that if it was just about the money like we all think it is? And the point that they were making is that it's about something much deeper. Something much deeper. And I don't know what that is, but I just wanted to make that point. Roseanne, man. Joe Rogan. Thank you to Joe Rogan for telling Roseanne to start a podcast. Because, again, when she left the studio, or when the episode was over, Joe's like, we're going to set you up. Don't worry, we're going to set you up, which means that Jamie probably breaks down everything you're going to need. They figure out who's going to be the producer, who's going to do all that stuff. And the next thing you know, Roseanne has a podcast that I think is going to do really, really well, especially after this Tucker Carlson interview. Again, go and check it out. It's on Spotify. And other than that, subscribe, like, and I'm out.